Hi, this is Davey. I hope you're doing great today. So, I want to spend some time today talking about side effect. Well, what are side effects in programming? To explain that, I think this video is going to be cut in maybe 2 to 3 small version. The first one is going to be talking about theoretical things, and I'm gonna be using a drawing board so I can explain you what happened when we're talking about side effect. The second one is going to be about coding, explaining you in a certain way that you will use it in JavaScript. And I think I will do a third video where I explain it from Haskell, the programming language, so the Haskell point of view, because JavaScript doesn't have a natural way to handle JavaScript, or TypeScript doesn't have a natural way to handle a side effect, but Haskell has, and I'm gonna show you how you can do the same thing in JavaScript. But yeah, you're gonna have to stick around and buckle up, because side effects seem pretty easy, but you can quickly get lost when you start thinking in terms of like how do you handle side effect in the real world, in the tech, in a real JavaScript project. Okay, so let's get going. Hi, you see me? I know I already said hi before, but I want to make sure that you're focused here and you see what I'm about to do. So now let's think of a function, right? When we talk about side effect, we're actually referring to a function. And let's think of a function as a box, right? A box without doors, basically, right? So that box there, if you want to do some let me make sure that I can use my I can use this here. So if you have that box has input, right, and hopefully output. What I mean by input or an output is basically what comes in there are basically a set of arguments, right? So that's basically the thing that comes in there, and hopefully the thing that comes out of here, right, is basically your output, right? So you get you get this input and that output. What happened right in there is kind of the logic, right? And in that logic there, if strictly speaking you have the argument, so meaning the input right here. So let's rename that into input. So strictly speaking, if the input is like, for the same input you get the same output, we're talking about this idea of pure function. And that was the video that of yesterday. You can find it on the YouTube channel, and we're going to link it here at the bottom in the description. However, what is happening here is the part that could then be analyzed, like, hey, in there, what is happening? Are we making HTTP call? Are we dealing with file systems? Are we doing some set timeout and things like that? So if we zoom into that box, I'm gonna redraw that box right here. So if we zoom into that box, we start looking at the fact that that box is basically has it has a set of operations that are happening in there. But if some of these operations are how could you call that? Just like, think of it this way: you have you're interacting with the system, and each time you call that system, sometimes it gives you, like, it responds in 3 seconds, the other time it responds in like 5 seconds, and another time in 1 second. It's probably because inside that system it has mechanism that will go out there and do HTTP calls, or it has a mechanism that will call a database, a DB call, right? Or somewhere here, it will have a mechanism that read a file, read file. In all cases, each of these mechanisms represent a side effect. Why is a side effect? Why are we calling them side effect? It's because they're unpredictable. You don't have control over them. You don't have control over the time they're going to take to respond, right? Even if you make a call right now to a database and you get the answer right away, fantastic. It still means that, yeah, maybe you have a powerful computer and you can do things with it, but you don't actually have control over the that other system. So you're interacting with the system outside of your scope, and that system there is considered as a side effect. Your function can still have input and then output. That is totally okay, but from a pure versus pure and non-pure function approach, the fact that inside what is happening right there inside is not fully pure. Now, let me show you that in a context that you probably understand also if you use technology like Redux or right. So in the Redux term, you have something called a store, and then you have the application here. So I'm gonna just highlight the things here. So you have the store, right? And then you have the UI. The UI here is basically your application, a React or Angular app or anything like that. What the UI does, it only and it's important that you see these arrow here. What the UI does, it only dispatch action. It basically says, hey, something happens in my app, right? It just dispatch that action. And then based on this action, so this is the third part here, reducer will pick up the action and then decide which one is going to modify the data so that the store is being updated, right? So this is the fourth. And then when the store is updated, actually the UI has already subscribed to the store. So that mechanism there, it is a front-end focus mechanism. It is a pure system. What you probably saw in the world of Redux, you saw the fact that we had this thing called a timeline, like a time traveler, where you could basically replay all the action that happened in the app, because yeah, the app is basically going in only one direction. It goes this way. That's the way it travels. So there is no moment when it just says like, hey, I'm gonna go the other way. No, there is no such a thing. You don't travel the other way. You stay in just one way. So let me remove that part right here. You don't have that. So if you think in the world of React, this is unidirectional mechanism, a unidirectional mechanism there. However, if your app is only doing this, guess what? Your app isn't doing really much, because it's only yeah, okay, it could do a lot of things, in a sense like you have a front-end focused app, doesn't interact with anything out there. It doesn't deal with DOM. It doesn't deal with a backend, a database, or things like that. Yeah, fantastic. There are apps that basically do that. Even that, I'm trying to think of an app that doesn't do analytics even local analytics or doesn't write things in the local storage. But if you take that system in a pure way, that's what it does. Now, the way Redux solve it by saying, hey, apps with that side effect don't really do anything. What they do is basically they say like, from the UI, so let me just remove that line here. We're gonna go from the UI. So from the UI, it allows you to dispatch actions, and some of these action there, right, will be handled by something called effect, right? So if you go here, you're going to have something called effect, and I don't know if that's the way really in Redux they use it, but if you think of technology like NGRX, they have something called effect. So some of the action that needs to go and deal with effect, they go outside of that flow, and then through the effect, so no, what basically happened here is they go outside of that flow, the effect happens, and then the effect's gonna trigger dispatch here. It's gonna dispatch another action, and then that action will come in there, and then that flow will resume. So literally at the action point, when on the UI you trigger an action, it will just say like, okay, that action there is going to trigger an effect. So call a database or do something outside of that flow. Then let it happen outside of the flow without disturbing the flow. And whenever you're done, because don't forget that an effect, you don't have control on when it's gonna be done. But once it's done, you can then bring the data back and the result of the effect, hopefully that the effect returns you something. Then you can bring that back into the flow, and then the flow continues. That's the theoretical part. In my next video, I'm going to go into the code and explain you that from a code perspective. Okay? So you stick around, you click that other video, and then I see you in the next one. Cheers.